Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and it is part 2 today of the 1990 Action Force Annual, wherein our G.I. Joes are concerned for the welfare of their mate, Gung Ho, who has seemingly gone off the reservation and started doing some mercenary work, and we need to get to the bottom of it. It's very exciting stuff. He's in the, I believe was he in Cambodia? Lots of stuff going on this week. Excited to get back into it. For those of you new to this show, Joe on Joe is the only podcast where I've talked about every episode of the Sunbow cartoon, the DIC cartoon. We've done Extreme, and we've also covered the Marvel comic books, and let me think. Yeah, and now we're doing some of this, and we're doing some Action Force stuff. We've done, we're just the home of a lot of stuff. Been around for a while, and I appreciate you guys jumping on, joining in, and having a lot of fun. If you want to join us online, you can find me at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod. You can send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com, and that is your direct line to a good time. If you want to be a guest on this show, please reach out. We have segments called You on Joe, which for the next 2 weeks after this episode, we're going to have a couple great You on Joe interviews. Spoiler alert. And I know you're going to love them because I had a lot of fun recording both of them. So that's exciting for the next 2 weeks. And, you know what else is exciting? Because we're getting into Oscar time. If you guys love movies like I do, I just saw Mean Girls over the weekend. It was good. It wasn't, I feel like it was afraid to be a full blown musical. Like it wanted to say, yeah, we're kind of like the old movie, but we're our own thing. So it got better in like the second half of the movie, but I thought it was charming. It was totally charming. You know, I don't know if that's your thing. I've seen the original like once. I didn't really love it. So this was fun. It was fun. Anyway, but yeah. So if you want more in-depth look at things like Mean Girls, give our great sponsor, the Movies in a Meal podcast, a listen. They talk about all the latest movies. The Golden Globes just happened. I'm sure they had some thoughts on that. Oscars are right around the corner. They're going to have thoughts on that. I believe the Emmys were just last night, so they're going to have thoughts on that. Maybe. I don't know if they... Yeah, well, no, they do TV. What am I talking about? So give them a listen. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. And we're back. I've got this week, Mutt and Junkyard Classified came in the mail, and boy, are they pretty. They're very pretty figures, guys. I really, really like them. Not only is it obviously a fan favorite figure of probably everyone's, but I think they look good. I think Junkyard probably looks as menacing as he's ever looked. I love that they gave him a smiling face too. The body armor is a great addition. I like Mutt's the scars on his face. I like that it's like 2 quick scratches. That makes me think it was a cat for some reason. Like he got cat scratched, not dog scratched. Junkyard would never hurt him. He got cat scratched. But yeah, so I got that this week. I think that's it. This is the week that Cobra, Cobra Commander, I guess is the full name. Cobra Commander drops the new comic book from Skybound and Image. So that when this show airs, that book will be on the stands. So give it a listen. Give it a read, rather. Give us a listen. Give it a read. I know you're going to enjoy it. So Action Force 1990 annual. as we said, there were a couple profiles in there. We said there were some games. We covered the games last time. So we're gonna get to part 2 of the story today. But we're going to also, let's check out some of the classified names. So it's basically the same kind of stuff you'd see on their file code, or more importantly, the order of battle entry. But this one's on Dr. Mindbender. There's a couple little differences. Dr. Mindbender was, at one time, an excellent orthodontist. He was held in respect by the community and was judged by many to be generous and honest. His passion for electronics led to tinkering with an electric brainwave stimulator as a means of relieving dental pain. Unfortunately, the good doctor made the tragic mistake of experimenting on himself. The machine malfunctioned, causing a complete personality change. He became hateful, deceitful, and vain. Dr. Mindbender abandoned his practice and devoted all his time to perfecting his digital brain scrambling device into a hand-portable weapon system capable of reducing the most strong-willed individual into a cowering wimp, which up till this moment, I always forget that, yeah, he did come with a little portable mind zapper thing. I always forget that about Mindbender, with the little plastic hose on it. Let's see here. So once he had done so, he began to use the stimulator to practice blackmail and extortion. Now, you know you're an action force when they spell practice with an S. However, via the criminal underworld, he was approached by an extremist Middle Eastern government. They put Mindbender and his machine to use as a spy. Using the stimulator, he, quote, stole, unquote, top secret information from high-ranking military personnel and armament researchers. This information was then bought by his Arab employers for a very substantial fee. By now, Cobra, ever alert for new raids to subjugate and control, began to show an interest in Mindbender's handiwork. He was approached by a Cobra agent who had been advising for the good doctor's employers. Mindbender was told that if he joined Cobra, he would be guaranteed virtually unlimited funds to continue his research. Mindbender agreed. Aside from constructing various brainwashing and scrambling devices, Mindbender is also believed to have conducted research into genetic tampering and DNA splicing. I love Mindbender. I've always loved Mindbender. I know he's always a hit or miss with people because the way he looks at the shirtless look and the mustache and the monocle and stuff. I think that's all a winning combination, I gotta be honest. And then the simple fact that basically, orthodontist, I know is different from dentistry, but he's basically a lunatic orthodontist that has mastered mind control and electronics, robotics. Like, he's done all of this and he can pull a molar. That's a winner for me. So we've also got a profile here on Lieutenant Falcon. Now, his place of birth, according to Action Force, in the Action Force universe, is Glastonbury, England. Lieutenant Falcon is of Anglo-American descent. His father served with the 10th SFGA Special Forces Group Airborne at Fort Bragg's Smoke Bomb Hill. While on an exchange tour with the SAS in Britain, Falcone Sr. met and married an English girl. She followed her husband to America after Vincent was born and became a citizen of the United States. Vincent enlisted in the Army as soon as he could and quickly became the family's second-generation Green Beret. Green Beret is the nickname for the U.S. Special Forces. Joining the 5th SFGA's Blue Light Counter-Terrorist Unit as an A-Team Executive Officer, XO, Falcon trained in demolition, language studies. He is proficient in Spanish, French, Arabic, and Swahili, and field medicine. On completing his training, he was sent with his team into action in Latin America. Here his A-Team, which, by the way, is where the A-Team comes from, were assigned to an isolated sector of thick jungle. Their job was to stop cross-border operations by anti-governmental guerrillas. To do this, Falcon decided to win the, quote, hearts and minds of the people of the isolated village in his sector by providing medical care, aiding in construction and farming projects, and giving his M16 rifle to the village leader. He was able to persuade the people to stop giving food and supplies to the anti-government figures. Within 2 months, all guerrilla activity had ceased. Falcon's A-Team had managed to accomplish what massive air power and hordes of infantry had not, without firing a shot. Now, Falcon serves as Hawk's second-in-command of Action Force U.S. contingent, although he regularly operates in Europe alongside his counterpart, Flint. I wonder if they made Flint his counterpart just because they both have the snappy headgear. I think there was one more. Oh, yeah, there totally is one more, and it's on Cobra Commander's battle armor. It's all the way at the end. This is interesting. And so It's a good drawing of the battle armor. Do they give us a credit up front who draws it? They don't. But it's very... I mean, it's got Simonson vibes to it. It's not, I mean, it doesn't feel like it though, but it's got that vibe to it. It's really, it's kind of a cool drawing of this. And it also feels like they flattened it. Like however the initial drawing was of this battle armor, it looks like it feels like they truncated the top maybe to fit the space or something. Because just above the waist, it looks like he's shorter than he should be, or his head's too smashed or something. However, having said that, it's kind of a fun drawing, and I mean it when I say there's notes of Simonson in here. The way the metal, the glinting on the metal, very much that. His hands do, although his right fist does not have that signature middle knuckle kick up that Simonson gives. So, I mean, I'm not saying it is, but it's got that vibe. Whoever's drawn this was definitely channeling him. And frankly, his look for Apocalypse. So, wouldn't be surprised because there's a little bit of a similarity between the Apocalypse armor, the traditional, very first early images of Apocalypse, and this the Cobra's battlesuit armor. This might, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Anecdotally, this might be the best looking I've ever seen this armor drawn. It's pretty cool. Check it out for sure. So it says top secret for the attention of Hawk, Lieutenant Falcon, and Flint. Collated data on Cobra body armor, battle armor. Again, you're an Action Force when they spell armor with a U. 2 weeks ago, we received a coded transmission from our source in Mars, Military Armament Research Systems, Corporation's London section. It stated that a full bodysuit of battle armor was being constructed under Destro's direct supervision for personal use by Cobra Commander. The suit, we now know, combines flexible bulletproof polymer fabrics, 10mm composite blazer plates protecting vital areas, and beryllium steel plating components. The entire suit has thermostatically controlled air conditioning, is solvent resistant, and has full NBC, nuclear, biological, and chemical protection. All air entering the suit is passed through a series of filters and scrubs before being inhaled. The plate parts are understood to be able to take direct hits from a heavy machine gun up to 50 cal. Flexible areas can apparently stop anything up to 357 Magnum. There are also built-in laser sensors to detect laser energy from designators or spotters. The helmet is fitted with an integral communication system which is hardened against EMP, electromagnetic pulses. It also has internal readouts for environmental quality, a miniaturized with an S, computer display, and an HMS helmet-mounted sight that can be tied into Cobra fire control systems via a neck socket. We suspect that the helmet is an anti-tamper device with direct hookup to half-pound plastic explosives. Make unknown. With so much protection, we can now expect to see Cobra Commander much more frequently on the battlefield. But it is generally felt that we won't have to worry about Cobra outfitting whole units with this suit. Each one costs as much as a jet fighter. Regards, Lady J. I dig that write-up for a couple reasons. One, it uses a lot of aspects that Destro uses in his normal, the references, the beryllium steel, the targeting computers. That's all very Destro-centric product. And it makes sense that if at some point Cobra Commander would say, hey, Destro, you've got all this great stuff, this beryllium steel helmet, all this tech, make me a suit of armor that reflects all that. That makes this battle armor make a lot more sense than the comic book, the Marvel Real American Hero edition, which was Fred built this in his basement. So this makes me like this battle armor even more. And I do like the battle armor just because it's crazy. But this kind of description makes me like it even more. I think that's pretty cool. So that's that. And we're going to go back a couple pages. Here we go to part 2 of the story called Rogue Delta. And it's Out of Time, Out of Mind. And here we go. They have called it Grave Island and said it was their home. It was a barren place in the midst of the dead waters. This was where Hades had existed through a living death for 10 years. Oh yeah, Hades was the group of U.S. soldiers from Vietnam that Gung Ho served with, and he thought they had all died, at this point, 15 years ago, I think. So, or maybe it's 10 years rather, because it says through a living death for 10 years. So yeah, he thinks they've been dead for a decade. The Gung Ho knew he was in shock. It was an effort just to stay sane and keep the thought of ghosts from his bewildered mind. But here was Ed Barry telling him about Grave Island. Ed Barry, his friend, who he had been told had died in 1972. Yeah, so yeah, 1990, 72. Yeah, it's like 18 years, 17 years. And there was Jack Saint and Mikey Jabowski and Steve Delaney, the medic. It was maddening. He was in a chopper full of ghosts, and he didn't believe in ghosts. We got shot up pretty bad, but about 20 of us made it to Grave Island, and we were laid low there, Ed was saying. And we've been fighting from there ever since, put in Saint gleefully. Fighting, managed Gung Ho, a catch in his voice. Well, sure, Lafitte, said Jabowski in his lazy drawl. This war may have been carrying on for nearly 1/4 century, but that doesn't mean Orpheus stops fighting. Horror filled Gung Ho. They thought the Vietnam War was still going on. They were still fighting it. He knew at once that he had to tell them up front it was over. He knew at once that to tell them up front that it was over might seriously affect their belief in him. But what about you, Etienne? Asked Ed. We thought you were dead. Well, I was hurt bad, he managed. Then, with gathering confidence, groan of desperation, I made it back and was assigned to a special operations group. I heard you guys might still be alive, and so I came looking. Now, there were so many questions, so much confusion, Gung Ho could barely cope with it all. Funny, though, murmured Delaney. We radioed High Command at Saigon several times to ask after you, and they said you never made it. Yeah, and every time the supply ships came down, we asked the pilots after you, added Ed. Well, I've been doing some very hush-hush covert stuff, invented Gung Ho hastily. High Command probably thought it was better if I was officially dead. Well, that settles it, thought Gung Ho. After what they've just said, it's clear that it's not just a case of Orpheus being cut off and thinking the war's still on. Somebody has been telling them so and letting them believe it, but who and why? We're coming in, cried Saint. The others will be so surprised to see you. Through the hatch, Gung Ho could see the Grave Island complex. Security bunkers, supply dumps, hangars housing at least another 4 gunship choppers. How many others, he asked. Well, there's about 50 of us now, counting the replacement squads they dropped in, yelled Ed over the rotor noise. About 16 of us will be faces from the good old days. But do you know what? He added, this'll kill you. Only 16 of Orpheus, 17 counting you, have made it this far, and guess who's among them? Rain Keene. Gung Ho grimaced inwardly. Rain Keene had been a tough, ruthless soldier. He had been the only man in Orpheus Gung Ho had not liked. Their rivalry was legendary, so he'd made it too, huh? One face from the past I won't be pleased to see. But old scores had no place here. He had to think fast and find out what was going on. And then he had to rescue his old comrades from a nightmare war they'd been tricked into fighting these past 10 years. Hawk passed the field glasses to Tunnel Rat and wiped his brow thoughtfully. It's marked on the map as Sandbar 70. Got no proper name, Cutter whispered to them from behind. I guess that should have been a whisper. Looks a little more substantial than a sandbar. Emplacements, dug in. They've been here a while, years perhaps. Tunnel Rat lowered the glasses. Getting in won't be easy. Well, what about storm drains, sewage ducting? Asked Hawk. That's your specialty. Maybe, nodded Tunnel Rat. Ooh, I got a Night Force Tunnel Rat this week too, thoughtfully. But are any of you going to want to follow me down one? Well, we'll see, said Hawk. Then he shook his head in despair. God, Cutter, this is such a mess. Well, at least we know why Gung Ho has gone rogue. A pretty good reason, if you ask me. And if Hades is composed of his old squad, then there's a good deal more than the well-being of one Action Force operative to be considered here. I know, said Hawk. Let's get back to the whale and form a game plan. I think our best bet is a bit of covert reconnaissance. How about leading Jinx and Falcon in there via the storm drains, Tunnel Rat? I can do, boss, replied the sturdy commando. Right. Though I've got an idea Falcon is going to hate the idea. I hate the idea, announced Falcon, after a lift ticket had lowered him and Jinx onto the whale to join the briefing. Lifeline's been telling me about some of the things that lurk and quiver in the mud around here, and I am not too keen on meeting them. Not only that, but the water around here is rich in chemical poison. Need I go on? Nope, said Hawk dryly. But if Lifeline knows all about it, then he'll be able to patch you up when you come out. You mean if, added Tunnel Rat with a wicked smile. Falcon groaned. Sorry, Falk, laughed Hawk. But I need the recon led by an officer who can think for himself. You may have to make some difficult decisions. So we'll be standing by in support. Any questions, Jinx? I take it our primary objective is to locate and bring out Gung Ho, and our secondary objective is to deduce the truth behind the Hades operation. Well, that's right, replied Hawk. It's a very British conversation here. Whilst you're going in, lift ticket, Wild Bill and Lifeline will stand off in the Tomahawk, ready to pick you up at a moment's notice. Leatherneck will join Cutter, Jay, Roadblock, and myself on the Whale, ready to launch a diversion in the outer defenses. And before we do all that, I'm going to spend about an hour on the radio to our top brass discovering exactly what they say we can do in this nightmare. Falcon, get your team going and radio us before you enter the base. We'll give you an hour inside before making our move. Good luck. On Grave Island, the nightmare grew worse for Gung Ho. On landing, he was surrounded by all his old friends, laughing, asking about the big outside and the state of the god-awful war. Gung Ho lied and lied again, making up stuff about offenses, tactical withdrawals, resounding victories. As the crowd of old familiar faces led him to the canvas mess hall, Gung Ho could see the other men, silent, standing off away, watching. They were new, unknown. They, he felt sure, saw the measure of every lie he uttered. In the mess hall sat Rain Keen, looking up with a sneer from his sea rats, unchanged and still hatefully arrogant. Well, how's tricks, feet? He asked. Same as they ever were, Gung Ho replied with a nod. Rankeen rose and walked away, leaving Gung Ho in the swarm of his pestering, jovial friends. Rankeen crossed the compound and entered the blockhouse reserved for officers only. 2 guards, new guys, breasted their assault rifles in salute as he wandered into the room the men called the Oval Office. Trouble, Rankeen muttered, stubbing out his after-dinner Lucky Strike in a handy ashtray. Big trouble, from the good old days. I know, replied the man in the armchair. I've been informed. Bigger trouble than you realize. How so? Asked Rankeen, perching on the arm of the other chair. Our new friend, your old friend, has done great things since the end of the war. The man in the armchair removed and polished his monocle absently, such as, Etienne Lafitte is now Gung Ho, a covert operative of the International Anti-Terrorist Organization, Action Force. Well, I'll go back and waste him, spat Rankeen. Not yet. He would be more useful to us, turned as an ally, and I will attempt to win his spirit, added Dr. Mindbender, tonight. So now I get to do a Mindbender. Schwarzenegger, that's fun. There's a fun drawing on Mindbender on this page, too. When sleep had taken him at last, he had been in a dormitory surrounded by the snoring forms of his old Orpheus friends. Now Gung Ho awoke to silence. The dorm was empty and shrouded in blackness. On the guard walk outside through the net shutters, he watched a single bulb swinging in the night breeze. Nightmare prickles covered his body. The flash of a match spun him around. Someone seated on the edge of his bed was lighting a cigar, his face illuminated by the swelling flare of the flame. Who are you? Gung Ho croaked. I'm the last person you expected to see, Gung Ho, and the last you want to see. The man's voice was measured, droning, almost hypnotic. You know me by a nickname, Dr. Mindbender. Gung Ho tried to move, but his body wouldn't budge. It is much too late for that, my friend. I'm in control here. Kind of a Schwarzenegger, Eastern European weirdo. I don't know what's going on with his accent. I'm in control here, announced Mindbender in the same tones. Relax. Embrace what I'm telling you. Accept it. Curse you, Gung Ho managed, paralyzed. Your friends make excellent shock troops for Cobra. This is a very lucrative arrangement we have here. They all believe they are fighting a worthy war, thanks to my subtle auto-suggestion. I really got to commit to that accent. I apologize. The Gung Ho found he could no longer speak. Cobra found them here 8 years ago, castaways from a forgotten war. Yeah, he's not really Schwarzenegger. He's got a little bit of that, but then he hits his R's like better. It took me just 1 month to convince them utterly that war was still a reality. After 8 years operating as river pirates here, earning a fair-sized amount, I realized it was time to use them for bigger operations. Teeth clenched. The frozen Gung Ho shook like a man in a fever. Don't fight it. Become one with us. I know your courage as a soldier. I know how it would aid us. Come to Hades. Fight again the old war with your brothers. With a snarl, Gung Ho launched himself from the bed straight at Mindbender. but the blow from behind knocked him unconscious before his hands could close on the Cobra officer's throat. "Shame," muttered Mindbender to Rankine, eyeing the fallen man. "He would have made an excellent trooper, but his willpower and resistance are amazingly strong." Rankine cocked his automatic pistol. "No," ordered Mindbender. "Do you want to wake the whole camp? Get a couple men, Cobra men. Tie him up and drop him down the sink well. The tide will wash his body away. You can tell his friends in the morning that he had to leave urgently. Covert exercise. We mustn't damage their faith in us now, must we?" There was a stink and mud and rising, oily water all around him. Blackness. Gung Ho began to choke as he came around. We all know this happens in every story. They really just not that I'm saying I want Gung Ho dead, but really they would have just shot him and made an excuse. Like he went for a gun and call it a day. Anyway, but Gung Ho's still alive and he began to choke as he came around. He struggled, but his hands were tied. The only light came from a tiny moonlit grill. 12 meters above him, but it might as well have been a world away. Gung Ho tried to scream in fury and desperation, but his mouth was gagged with oilcloth. He began to sink in the rich chemical tide. Then the flashlight caught him. He knew it was over now, for good. "Well, well, well," said Tunnel Rat, hauling his friend up by the shoulders. "Must stay put while we get a plan of operation formed. Hawk out." In the dim light of the whale's cabin, Hawk put down the walkie-talkie and turned to his team. "Cobra," he hissed, sitting on a stockpile of gold and weaponry acquired through delusion. The show just keeps getting better and better. "What do we do?" asked Cutter. "Well, Falcon's got Gung Ho, so let's pull him out and leave this party behind." Leatherneck was clearly angry. "Agreed," said Hawk, "but we can't just let Grave Island continue to operate like this. So we try to take it on with a chopper and a hovercraft, both low on firepower after yesterday's little fracas." Beneath Lady J's scorn, there was unavoidable logic. "Action Force still has 17 hours left to close this case, by whatever methods we can call on. We've still got time to deliver a punch here that Cobra won't survive." Hawk frowned, then lifted his mic again. "Hawk with Rogue Delta mission calling home base Manila. Come in, Manila." "Manila here. Go ahead, Rogue Base Delta leader." "Map reference to follow. I'm requesting maneuver," and again, French spelling maneuver with an O. "Hammerbow." Repeat, hammerbow. Code word firefall. Do you copy? "Hammerbow, firefall. Acknowledged. Please wait for confirmation. Manila out." Jay raised her eyebrows thoughtfully. "You're not playing games anymore, are you, Hawk?" In the dark stench of the drainage tunnel, Falcon whispered and, quote, "understood, Hawk," into his mic and turned to the others. Jinx, Tunnel Rat, and Gung Ho. Hawk had decided this Cobra show has got to end now. We've got 1 hour to shake our tails back out of here. Let's move. 1 hour and then what? Asked Gung Ho edgily. Then Grave Island ceases to be a fact. He's called in an airstrike. 3 conquests from home base Manila. Time to go. That's those 3 conquests on the cover of this annual. Boom. That all comes together. Seriously. That's great. "Well, just hold on." There was fire in Gung Ho's voice. "I've come this far. I appreciate the assistance you guys gave me more than anything I can say, but I'm not leaving my buddies in this rat hole to take 20,000 pounds of saturated bombing. They're not to blame for this nightmare. They don't know the truth." Falcon shrugged. "It's too late, Etienne. There's too much mess for us to sort out. The odds are too great. We can only pull out and leave it to Slipstream's squadron to finish the job." "Well, no way," Gung Ho growled. "You go on without me, but I stay. Trust me, they need my help after all these years." He began to back away down the tunnel into the dark. Falcon ground his teeth, conflicting orders rising in his throat, all of which he knew were futile. Words wouldn't stop Gung Ho. Falcon was aware that Jinx and Tunnel Rat were watching him. "I need the recon led by an officer who can think for himself. You may have to make some difficult decisions," quoted Jinx dryly. "Do you remember everything Hawk says?" snapped Falcon. "Only when he sounds like John Wayne," she answered. "Damn it," said Falcon. "Damn it. Close up with me, Gung Ho. Wait up. You got yourself some backup." The waters of the South China Sea were dark under the nocturnal blanket. Slipstream edged west, leading his wingman, and checked the system of his Conquest X-30 once again. "Firefall leader to Rogue Delta. We are touching Mach 2, and the outlook is clear. Final approach will commence in 27 minutes. Over." Rogue Delta to Firefall leader. "Good hunting. Out." The fighters cut on through the night. "Falcon, get your team out of there. Now, that is an order," bellowed Hawk into the mic. "Say again, Hawk?" "Reception is bad. I can barely copy you," crackled Falcon's voice. "Falcon, Falcon." Jay shook her head. He switched off the set. Of all the crazy, half-baked, brainless stunts, snarled Hawk, there's no way they could take on these sorts of odds and come through. Even if they did, they'd still be on the island when the firefall takes it out. Well, unless, began Cutter. Nah, I'm too crazy to... Hawk paused. How long? Well, 21 minutes to strike, replied Roadblock moodily. Hawk looked around at his team. Witness, he announced. Your commanding officer goes as crazy as the jarheads in his squad. Cutter, start this crate up. Jay, get lift ticket on the horn. Roadblock, Leatherneck, get it to deck guns locked and loaded. Let's all go out in style. The light went on suddenly in the dorm. 15 sleepy Orpheus veterans roused angrily and drowsily at the intrusion. Raised voices died away at the sight of the 4 figures in the doorway. Gung Ho with an imposing Green Beret officer, a commando, and a veiled girl in red. The Marine spoke. My name is Falcon. I'm a lieutenant in the United States Armed Forces. I'm instructing you men to move it and follow me. You are not, repeat, not fully aware of the situation. You are being deceived into believing the continuation of the hostilities. Voices rose in anger again. Gung Ho's voice cut through it all like a razor. Stow it, Falcon, sir. They just won't understand that kind of speech. There's just one way. Gung Ho stepped into the center of the angry mob, raised his M16 he had borrowed from the Cobra Guard outside, and slammed back the bolt. Listen up, Orpheus. I came here because I'm carrying new orders from High Command direct. We have a new assignment as of this minute. Classification red. We must move right now. Saddle up. Shake your tails. Hey, cried Ed Barry. What's this new assignment? The big one you've all waited for. You're going home, guys. It's time to say goodbye to Grave Island and bug out. Something like a cheer began to rise. There were tears in the eyes of some of the old soldiers. But listen good, team, yelled Gung Ho. We got to stay real frosty on the way out. Intelligence reckons the enemy are going to try and prevent us from getting to our place in the sun. Orpheus were nearly all half-dressed now. Magazines slammed into stoners and M16s. Webbing belts swung over shoulders and hard hats were pulled onto heads. Close up, ordered Gung Ho. Fire team order. Watch your backs and move in bounding cover towards the dock area. Go! Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll's not on this admission. They swung out onto the compound in a bristling formation, but the arc-light gantry slammed on overhead and figures could be seen all around. Panic rose. Throw down your guns and lie in the dirt, demanded an amplified voice. You have no authorization to mobilize. Some of Orpheus looked like they were about to comply. Falcon shook his head. Hit and run, he yelled. Hit and run's also not on this mission. Take the game to them, Tunnel Rat. Help me get the lights. Confusion exploded in the compound. Falcon and Tunnel Rat made a break for the nearest cover, a row of jeeps, and opened up with the suppressing fire that sent the Cobra, imitation GIs, diving for cover. Then blackness fell again as Tunnel Rat's M60 joined Falcon's stoner and blasting the floodlights into fragments. Returning fire began, flickering muzzle flashes in the dark. Raised voices, the whine of bullets far too close. Move it, screamed Gung Ho, and Orpheus began to move, casting a devastating net of fire about it. It's no good, howled Falcon over the roar. They've got the weight in numbers and firepower. The party's theirs without a doubt. False dawn blossomed across the compound as Cobra troops fired star shells to illuminate the firefight. Tunnel Rat groaned. For sure, now they can see us again. There's no shooting out star shells like lamps. Well, use it to your advantage, ordered Falcon. To all those in the yelling distance, we can see them too. Pick your targets, selective fire. They did, but the return fire was fierce and pinning. Falcon cursed his luck and waited for the net to tighten up. The stockade wall by the blockhouses erupted, and a monstrous vision blasting half-caliber death wailed into the compound on its rubber skirts, headlights blazing. Hawk's voice rolled over the whale's tenoi. Orpheus, if you can get moving, get towards our front loading ramp on the double. The whale dropped its hatch open like a mouth, revealing Lady J and Hawk, adding their own covering fire with M16s to the already ferocious fire zone mustered by Roadblock and Leatherneck in the turrets. With Falcon leading, Orpheus ran the gauntlet of crossfire towards the armored hovercraft. Jinx, Gung Ho, and Tunnel Rat covering the rear, where several injured members of the squad were being hauled alongside their able-bodied colleagues. In the whale's cockpit, Cutter viewed the scene and bellowed into the radio mic to lift ticket. Backstop! That main defense tower is showering our boys with a lot of lead. Will do, Cutter, responded the chopper pilot from above. Like a terrible bird of prey, the big gunship thundered down into the light thrown by the star shells, loosing its remaining missiles at the Cobra Sentry Tower like lightning harpoons. The first of the Orpheus troops struggled aboard the whale. How long? Shouted Hawk. 6 minutes, replied Lady J against the noise, heaving an injured Jack Saint up the ramp. Where's Gung Ho? His friend Ed was hit, said Falcon, climbing aboard with equal amounts of blood and sweat soaking his face. He went back for him. The others are all aboard. We have to leave, said Jay passionately. From the ramp, Hawk and the others could see the fire that blossomed across the compound from the fallen sentry tower. Well, I'm afraid you're right, replied Hawk. We can't wait any longer. We have to leave for the sake of the ones we have managed to rescue. It's what Gung Ho would have wanted. Hawk turned and bellowed up the companionway over the stinging of bullets on the hull. Close the ramp. Get us out of here. The whale rose and swung away from the fire zone towards the dead waters, the wrath of Cobra hammering at its heels. Surrounded by fire, Gung Ho hurled aside his empty gun and heaved Ed Barry to his feet. Leave me, mumbled Barry, but the action forcer ignored the plea. I'm getting you out of here too, Gung Ho began, but his words trailed off. A figure stood before them, black against the fire. Rankine raised the .44 Magnum with a grin. Time I settled our old debts, he said. I always knew you'd be the one, said Gung Ho evenly. You didn't need any of Mindbender's persuasion, did you? You just went along with this whole sham for the money. You never cared about Orpheus. You just sold it out to Cobra, helped to turn it into a terrorist pack called Hades. You helped delude these men who called you brother. The hammer on Rankine's .44 came back. You're just like you were back then, a grunt with a big mouth. I'm shutting you up, Feet. Etienne Lafitte smiled. Enjoy your victory, brother. Grave Island is about to welcome an airstrike courtesy of Action Force. Rankine's eyes flickered skyward. Unsure for a moment, Gung Ho lunged at him, and the two GIs fell back, grappling like madmen. Between them, the .44 fired again and again and again. Slipstream's flight of 3 conquests slipped over the ground, like arrows in the night, the huge power of their wing-mounted ordnance falling, like apocalyptic fire, burying Grave Island's living nightmare forever. The glow of the conflagration could be seen across the delta. The Tomahawk swam up through the smoke from the blaze, hooking north towards distant Ho Chi Minh City. I repeat, said Wild Bill into his radio. We got him and his friend Barry. They're both injured, but Lifeline's patching them up. He says they'll make it. It appears Gung Ho had some old score to settle. We're heading home now. See you on the outside, Hawk. In the chopper's cargo hold, Gung Ho, a bandage around his shoulder, helped Lifeline make Ed Barry more comfortable in the sling stretcher. Well, that was the closest yet, remarked the medic with a sad smile. Yeah, but it was worth the effort, replied Gung Ho. That living hell had gone on for too many years for these men. Well, what about Mindbender? Asked Lifeline. Do you believe he's really dead? Gung Ho shook his head. I'll never believe anything about that monster. He knelt by the stretcher-bound Barry. You okay now, Ed? Barry managed a weak grin. I have a feeling there's a lot you're going to tell me, brother. I missed a lot of life through all those lies, right? Right. But we're really going home now, for real? Gung Ho nodded. The last dust off, Ed. Back to the outside, he said. Barry seemed to relax. At last, he said, to his eyes on the twinkling lights of the Ho Chi Minh City beneath him. Then he smiled. Good night, Saigon, he said. So, it's a fun story. I guess we don't need to know how Gung Ho got out. But, I guess we're to assume Gung Ho won that fight. So Rankine took those 45s, or 44 caliber shots. The chopper must have touched down and grabbed him. I guess I like the way it just seems to have wrapped up pretty quick. There's only so much space they had, I guess. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So, it's a fun story though. It's very shades of Braddock Missing in Action, Rambo 2. Yeah, Rambo 2. Rambo 3 was the one in Afghanistan. Rambo 2, the Chuck Norris Braddock movies. Very reminiscent of that stuff. I dig it. That was a lot of fun. So that's it. So next week we've got a You on Joe, which I know you're all going to want to listen to because we are talking about the fabulous new Taschen-sized gigantic tome of an omnibus, The Art of 3D Joes, with Carson Metaxas. So come on back next week and we'll get you some. So for that, now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.